What is the dollar value of a human life? If you were like most ethical, caring people, you should be appalled and angered that any human would even ask such a question. However, it is not a new concept. Both the Code of Hammurabi and Mosaic law address the issue of compensation in cases of accidental death or dismemberment. Likewise, Old Anglo-Saxon and ancient Scandinavian laws dealt with the questions of weregild, or man price, sums of money that were paid to the victim or his family in personal injury cases. Of course, anyone who understands the history of asbestos realizes that the recent epidemic of asbestosis and mesothelioma is not accidental. It is the direct result of gross negligence and unbridled corporate greed, as well as failure of the federal government to exercise oversight and provide citizen health care. Nonetheless, despite the fact that there may be an ethical argument for considering such negligence criminal, the law in virtually all industrialized nations, including the U.S., considers death and injury from asbestos a tort, or personal injury matter, and therefore a matter for the civil courts. The unfortunate fact is that science has no power to restore life, nor in many cases health and well-being. Therefore, as inadequate as it may be, monetary compensation for medical expenses, lost income, and pain and suffering are the only remedies available under the law. Settlement or damages. Technically, a mesothelioma settlement is different from an award or award of damages. The word settlement usually means that the parties have settled out of court, either prior to commencement of court proceedings or during the trial at some point prior to the judge's ruling. The offer of a settlement or the willingness to accept a settlement is often more a question of power than of justice. Either party to a lawsuit may offer to settle for a number of reasons. The defendant may wish to avoid negative publicity or the expense of extended litigation. If the plaintiff's case is a weak one, or if the judge and/or jury appear to be leaning in favor of the defendant, the plaintiff's lawyer may advise him or her to accept a settlement. A plaintiff may also offer to settle simply to avoid the time, expense, and psychological and physical strain of a lengthy court proceeding. On the other hand, if a defendant offers to settle when the plaintiff's case is going well, it strongly indicates that the defense expects to lose the case. If this is the situation, the plaintiff's attorney will either recommend that he or she not accept the offer or attempt to negotiate the highest settlement possible. In any event, the lawyer can only advise the client. He or she is obliged to act in accordance with the client's wishes, regardless of what may be the best course of action. If the plaintiff accepts a settlement, it constitutes a contract between him or her and the defendant in which the plaintiff agrees not to pursue or, in the case of trial already underway, continue legal action. Once the settlement has been paid, both parties file a notice with the court that the case has been dismissed. Because corporations value their public image nearly as much as large sums of money, such defendants may also stipulate in a settlement that such an agreement does not constitute an admission of wrongdoing, and additionally may restrain the plaintiff from discussing the case with other persons such as reporters or investigative journalists. How much? Mesothelioma settlements and damage awards have run into the astronomical sums over the past 2 decades. The first successful legal action in a mesothelioma case was Clarence Borel versus Fiberboard Paper Products Corporation, which began in 1969 and ended in 1973 with a posthumous award to the plaintiff's estate in the amount of nearly $80,000. In 2005, a retired 82-year-old machinist whose malignant mesothelioma was found to result from asbestos exposure in the workplace 60 years earlier, received an award of $10 million in a California case. In addition, the jury found the corporate defendant guilty of malice, fraud, and suppression of evidence. On the other hand, in the year 2004, a 76-year-old man brought action against the company in another California case, claiming his mesothelioma was due to asbestos exposure back in the 1950s. The defense for Asbestos Corporation Limited was able to convince the jury that the man's problem was actually lung cancer brought on by his history of cigarette smoking. Asbestos is the sole cause of mesothelioma, whereas tobacco use has long been associated with lung cancer. Predictably, the jury found in favor of the defendant, and the plaintiff received nothing. While details of the latter case were not readily available, it is likely that the plaintiff had not gotten his diagnosis from a qualified oncologist. This is important. One of the keys to successfully winning your mesothelioma case is to have an irrefutable diagnosis as well as expert testimony from cancer specialists. In a personal injury suit, proving causation is at the heart of your claim. The more credible the evidence and testimony, the stronger your case will be, resulting in a far greater chance of the jury finding in your favor. Remember that while medical costs and loss of income are fairly easy to determine, non-economic damages such as pain and suffering are quite subjective. Such damages can vary widely from one case to another. In some states, there are no limits to these non-economic damages. However, in the increasingly pro-corporate bias of today's legislative and political climate, this is likely to change. In 2005, there was an attempt in the U.S. Senate to deny citizens the right to cover damages from asbestos corporations, ironically called the FAIR Act. Sponsored by Pennsylvania Republican Senator Arlen Specter, this act called for the establishment of a federal trust fund from which asbestos victims would have been paid. However, as is the usual case with such federal programs over the past 25 years, it would have been inadequately funded. Fortunately, the bill was defeated in February of 2006 and tabled in committee, then reintroduced 3 months later. Thank you for watching. This video was produced by Asbestos.Net, a leading resource on all aspects of asbestos and mesothelioma. Our priority is to inform victims about the devastating effects of asbestos exposure, mesothelioma, asbestos cancer, asbestosis, and other asbestos-related diseases, and to advise them with a wealth of information. Individuals whose lives have been touched by mesothelioma have numerous questions and concerns. Their caregivers and family members also need accurate, reliable information. If you or a loved one have been diagnosed with mesothelioma or asbestos cancer and need more information, we invite you to visit and explore the thousands of pages of oncologist-reviewed material on Asbestos.net, to call our convenient toll-free number shown below and speak with a mesothelioma specialist, or to use the simple contact form found at Asbestos.net to request a free copy of our informative books, custom inserts, and DVD. Asbestos.net, information and help for patients and families.